Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome to another episode of Jash Reads. Today, we are reading Eragon by Christopher Paolini, and this is the first book in the Inheritance cycle. Originally going to be an Inheritance trilogy, but then, the third book was going to be so long, so it was split into two huge books. So, yay! you know, Okay, I was going to do a nice little intro talking about my past day or two. Then it's like, this is going to be a long chapter. And for future reference, if I ever do one of my Eragon dramatic readings in the daytime, it means it's going to be a long chapter. So if any of you are watching live, sit back, you're going to be here for a while. So if you like the dramatic readings, you're going to have a good time. If not, you really shouldn't be watching this. You know? Okay. And the chapter we're going to be reading today is Palancar Valley. Dun, 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 dun. Still weird with third person point of view. The sun rose the next morning with a glorious conflagration of pink and yellow. The air was fresh, sweet, and very cold. Ice edged the streams, and small pools were completely frozen over. After a breakfast of porridge, Eragon returned to the glen and examined the charred area. The morning light revealed no new details, so he started for home. The rough game trail was faintly worn and, in places, non existent. Because it had been forged by animals, it often backtracked and took long detours. Yet, for all its flaws, it was still the fastest way out of the mountains. The spine was one of the only places that King Galbatorix could not call his own. Stories were still told about how half his army disappeared after marching into its ancient forest. A cloud of misfortune and bad luck seemed to hang over it. Though the trees grew tall and the sky shone brightly, few people could stay in the spine for long without suffering an accident. Eragon was one of those few, not through any particular gift, it seemed to him, but because of persistent vigilance and sharp reflexes. He had hiked in the mountains for years, and yet he was still wary of them. Every time he thought they had surrendered their secrets, something happened to upset his understanding of them, like the stone's appearance. He kept up a brisk pace, and the league steadily disappeared. In late evening, he arrived at the edge of a precipitous ravine. The Nora River rushed by far below, heading to Palancar Valley. Gorged with hundreds of tiny streams, the river was a brutal force, battling against the rocks and boulders that barred its way. A low rumble filled the air. He camped in a thicket near the ravine and watched the moon rise before going to bed. And some time passes. And I sip a little bit of my tea. And then today I also have a backup drink, just in case. This is a long chapter, folks. I am prepared. Don't want to lose my voice. So I will continue reading, actually. It grew colder over the next day and a half. Eragon traveled quickly and saw little of the wary wildlife. A bit past noon, Hear the Agolda Falls blanketing everything with the dull sound of 1,000 splashes. The trail led him onto a moist slate outcropping which the river sped past, flinging itself into empty air and down mossy cliffs. Before him lay Palancar Valley, exposed like an unrolled map. The base of the Golda Falls, more than a half-mile below, was the northernmost point of the valley. A little ways from the falls was Carva Hall, a cluster of brown buildings. White smoke rose from the chimneys, defiant of the wilderness around it. At this height, farms were small, square patches no bigger than the end of his finger. The land around them was tan or sandy, where dead grass swayed in the wind. The Nora River wound from the falls toward Palancar's southern end, reflecting great strips of sunlight. Far in the distance it flowed past the village, Therinsford and the lonely mountain Utgard. Beyond that, he knew only that it turned north and ran to the sea. After a pause, Eragon left the outcropping and started down the trail, grimacing at the descent. When he arrived at the bottom, soft dusk was creeping over everything, blurring colors and shapes into gray masses. Carvahal's lights shimmered nearby in the twilight. The houses cast long shadows. Aside from Therinsford, Carvahal was the only village in Palancar Valley. The settlement was secluded and surrounded by harsh, beautiful land. Few traveled here except merchants and trappers. The village was composed of stout log buildings with low roofs, some thatched, others shingled. Smoke billowed from the chimneys, giving the air a woody smell. The buildings had wide porches where people gathered to talk and conduct business. Occasionally a window brightened as a candle or lamp was lit. Eragon heard men talking loudly in the evening air, while wives scurried to fetch their husbands, scolding them for being late. Eragon wove his way between the houses to the butcher's shop, a broad, thick beam building. Overhead, the chimney belched black smoke. He pushed the door open. The spacious room was warm and well lit by a fire snapping in a stone fireplace. A bare counter stretched across the far side of the room. The floor was strewn with loose straw. Everything was scrumptiously clean, as if the owner spent his leisure time digging in obscure crannies for minuscule pieces of filth. Behind the counter stood the butcher, Sloan. A small man, he wore a cotton shirt and a long, blood-stained smock. An impressive array of knives swung from his belt. He had a shallow, pockmarked face, and his black eyes were suspicious. He polished the counter with a ragged cloth. Sloane's mouth twisted as Eragon entered. Well, the mighty hunter joins the rest of us mortals. How many did you bag this time? None, was Eragon's curt reply. He had never liked Sloan. The butcher always treated him with disdain, as if he were something unclean. A widower, Sloan seemed to care for only one person, his daughter, Katrina, on whom he doted. I'm amazed, said Sloan, with affected astonishment. He turned his back on Eragon to scrape something off the wall. And that's your reason for coming here? Yes, admitted Eragon uncomfortably. If that's the case, let's see your money. Sloan tapped his fingers when Eragon shifted his feet and remained silent. Come on! Either you have it or you don't. Which is it? I don't really have any money, but I do. What? No money? The butcher cut him off sharply. And you expect to buy meat? Are the other merchants giving away their wares? Should I just hand you the goods without charge? Besides, he said abruptly, it's late. Come back tomorrow with money. I'm closed for the day. Eragon glared at him. I can't wait until tomorrow, Sloan. It'll be worth your while, though. I found something to pay you with. He pulled out the stone with a flourish and set it gently on the scarred counter where it gleamed with light from the dancing flames. Stole it more likely, muttered Sloan, leaning forward with an interested expression. Ignoring the comment, Eragon asked, will this be enough? Sloan picked up the stone and gauged its weight speculatively. He ran his hands over its smoothness and inspected the white veins. With a calculating look, he set it down. It's pretty, but how much is it worth? I don't know, admitted Eragon, but no one would have gone to the trouble of shaping it unless it had some value. Obviously, said Sloan with exaggerated patience. But how much value? Since you don't know, I suggest that you find a trader who does, or take my offer of 3 crowns. That's a miser's bargain. It must be worth at least 10 times that, protested Eragon. 3 crowns would not even buy enough meat to last a week. Sloan shrugged. If you don't like my offer, wait until the traders arrive. Either way, I'm tired of this conversation. The traders were a nomadic group of merchants and entertainers who visited Carvajal every spring and winter. They bought whatever excess the villagers and local farmers had managed to grow or make, and sold what they needed to live through another year. Seeds, animals, fabrics, and supplies like salt and sugar. But Eragon did not want to wait until they arrived. It could be a while. And his family needed the meat now. Fine, I accept, he snapped. Good, I'll get you the meat. Not that it matters. Where did you find this? 2 nights ago, in the spine. Get out! Demanded Sloan, pushing the stone away. He stomped furiously to the end of the counter and started scrubbing old bloodstains off a knife. Why? Asked Eragon. He drew the stone closer as if to protect it from Sloan's wrath. I won't deal with anything you bring back from those damned mountains. Take your sorcerer's stone elsewhere. Sloan's hand suddenly slipped and he got a finger on the knife. But he seemed not to notice. He could and you to scrub, stain the blade with fresh blood. You refuse to sell to me. Yes, unless you pay with coins. Sloan growled and hefted the knife, sidling away. Go before I make you. The door behind them slammed open. Eragon whirled around, ready for more trouble, and stopped Horst, a hulking man. Sloane's daughter, Katrina, a tall girl of 16, trailed behind him with a determined expression. Eragon was surprised to see her. She usually absented herself from any arguments involving her father. Sloan glanced at them warily, then started to accuse Eragon. He won't quiet, announced Horst in a rumbling voice, cracking his knuckles at the same time. He was Carvajal Smith, as his thick neck and scarred leather apron attested. His powerful arms were bare to the elbow. A great expanse of hairy, muscular chest was visible through the top of his shirt. A black beard, carelessly trimmed, roiled and knotted like his jaw muscles. Sloan, what have you done now? Nothing. He gave Eragon a murderous gaze, then spat. This boy came in here and started badgering me. I asked him to leave, but he won't budge. I even threatened him, and he still ignored me. Sloan seemed to shrink as he looked at Horst. Is this true? Demanded the smith. No, replied Eragon. I offered this stone as payment for some meat, and he accepted it. When I told him that I'd found it in the spine, he refused to even touch it. What difference does it make where it came from? Horst looked at the stone curiously, then returned his attention to the butcher. Why won't you trade with him, Sloan? No love for the spine myself, but if it's a question of the stone's worth, I'll back it with my own money. The question hung in the air for a moment. Then Sloan licked his lips and said, This is my own store. I can do whatever I want. Katrina stepped out from behind Horst and tossed back her auburn hair like a spray of molten copper. Father, Eragon is willing to pay. Give him the meat, and then we can have supper. Sloane's eyes narrowed dangerously. Go back to the house. This is none of your business. I said go. Katrina's face hardened. Then she marched out of the room with a stiff back. Eragon watched with disapproval, but dared not interfere. Horst tugged at his beard before saying reproachfully, Fine, you can deal with me. What were you going to get, Eragon? His voice reverberated through the room. As much as I could. Horst pulled out a purse and counted out a pile of coins. Give me your best roasts and steaks. Make sure that it's enough to fill Eragon's pack. The butcher hesitated, his gaze darting between Horst and Eragon. Not selling to me would be a very bad idea, stated Horst. Glowering venomously, Sloan slipped into the back room. A frenzy of chopping, rapping, and low cursing reached them. After several uncomfortable minutes, he returned with an armful of wrapped meat. His face was expressionless as he accepted Horst's money, then proceeded to clean his knife, pretending that they were not there. Horst scooped up the meat and walked outside. Eragon hurried behind him, carrying his pack and the stone. The crisp night air rolled over their faces, refreshing after the stuffy shop. Thank you, Horst. Uncle Garo will be pleased. Horst laughed quietly. Don't thank me. I've wanted to do that for a long time. Sloan's a vicious troublemaker. It does him good to be humbled. Katrina heard what was happening and ran to fetch me. Good thing I came. Two of you were almost at blows. Unfortunately, I doubt he'll serve you or any of your family the next time you go in there, even if you do have coins. Eh. Why did he explode like that? We've never been friendly, but he's always taken our money, and I've never seen him treat Katrina that way, said Eragon, opening the top of the pack. Horst shrugged. Ask your uncle. He knows more about it than I do. Eragon stuffed the meat into his pack. Well, now I have one more reason to hurry home, to solve this mystery. Here, this is rightfully yours. He offered the stone. Horst chuckled. No, you keep your strange rock. As for payment, I'll breach plans to leave for Fenster next spring. He wants to become a master smith, and I'm going to need an assistant. You can come and work off the dead on your spare days. Eragon bowed slightly, delighted. Horst had two sons, Albrecht and Baldur, both of whom worked in his forge. Taking one's place was a generous offer. Again, thank you. I look forward to working with you. He was glad that there was a way for him to pay Horst. His uncle would never accept charity. Then Eragon remembered what his cousin had told him before he had left on the hunt. Uh, Roran wanted me to give Katrina a message, but since I can't, can you get it to her? Of course. He wants her to know that he'll come into town as soon as the merchants arrive, and that he will see her then. That all? Eragon was slightly embarrassed. No, he also wants her to know that she is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen, and that he thinks of nothing else. Horst's face broke into a broad grin, and he winked at Eragon. Getting serious, isn't he? Yes, sir, Eragon answered with a quick smile. Could you also give her my thanks? It was nice of her to stand up to her father for me. I hope that she isn't punished because of it. Roran would be furious if I got her into trouble. I wouldn't worry about it. Sloan doesn't know that she called me, so I doubt it'll be too hard on her. Before you go, will you sup with us? I'm sorry, but I can't. Garo is expecting me, said Eragon, tying off the top of the pack. He hoisted it onto his back and started down the road, raising his hand in farewell. The meat slowed him down, but he was eager to be home, and renewed vigor filled his steps. The village ended abruptly, and he left its warm lights behind. The pearlescent moon peeked over the mountains, bathing the land in a ghostly reflection of daylight. Everything looked bleached and flat. Near the end of his journey, he turned off the road, which continued south. A simple path led straight through waist-high grass and up a knoll, almost hidden by the shadow of protective elm trees. He crested the hill and saw a gentle light shining from his home. The house had a shingled roof and a brick chimney. Eaves hung over the whitewashed walls, shadowing the ground below. One side of the enclosed porch was filled with split wood, ready for the fire. A jumble of farm tools cluttered the other side. The house had been abandoned for half a century when they moved in after Garrow's wife, Maureen, died. It was 10 miles from Carvajal, farther than anyone else's. People considered the distance dangerous because the family could not rely on help from the village in times of trouble. But Eragon's uncle would not listen. 100 feet from the house, in a dull-colored barn, lived two horses, Burka and Brug, with chickens and a cow. Sometimes there was also a pig, but they had been unable to afford one this year. A wagon sat wedged between the stalls. On the edge of their fields, a thick line of trees traced along the Nora River. He saw a light move behind a window as he warily reached the porch. "Uncle, it's Eragon. Let me in." A small shutter slid back for a second. Then the door swung inward. Caro stood with his hand on the door. His worn clothes hung on him like rags on a stick frame. A lean, hungry face with intense eyes gazed out from under graying hair. He looked like a man who had been partially mummified before it was discovered that he was still alive. "Rorian's sleeping," was his answer to Eragon's inquiring glance. A lantern flickered on a wood table, so old that the grain stood up in tiny ridges like a giant fingerprint. Near a wood stove were rows of cooking utensils tacked onto the wall with homemade nails. A second door opened to the rest of the house. The floor was made of boards polished smooth by years of tramping feet. Eragon pulled off his pack and took out the meat. "What's this? Did you buy meat? Where did you get the money?" asked his uncle harshly as he saw the wrapped packages. Eragon took a breath before answering. "No, Horse bought it for us." "You let him pay for it?" "I told you before, I won't beg for our food. If we can't feed ourselves, we might as well move into town. Before you can turn around twice, they'll be sending us used clothes and asking if we'll be able to get through the winter." Garrow's face paled with anger. "I didn't accept charity," snapped Eragon. "Horace agreed to let me work off the debt this spring. He needs someone to help him because Outreach is going away. And where will you get the time to work for him? Are you going to ignore all the things that need to be done here?" asked Garrow, forcing his voice down. Eragon hung his bow and quiver on hooks beside the front door. "I don't know how I'll do it," he said irritably. "Besides, I found something that could be worth some money." He set the stone on the table. Carol bowed over it. The hungry look on his face became ravenous, and his fingers moved with a strange twitch. You found this in the spine? Yes, said Eragon. He explained what had happened. And to make matters worse, I lost my best arrow. I'll have to make more before long. They stared at the stone in the near darkness. How was the weather? Asked his uncle, lifting the stone. His hands tightened around it like he was afraid it would suddenly disappear. Cold, was Eragon's reply. It didn't snow, but it froze each night. Carol looked worried by the news. Tomorrow you'll have to help Rorian finish harvesting the barley. If we can get the squash picked too, the frost won't bother us. He passed the stone to Eragon. Here, keep it. When the traders come, we'll find out what it's worth. Selling is probably the best thing to do. The less we're involved with magic, the better. Why did Horse pay for the meat? It took only a moment for Eragon to explain his argument with Sloan. I just don't understand what angered him so. Caro shrugged. Sloane's wife, Ismira, went over the Golden Falls year before you were brought here. He hasn't been near the spine since, nor had anything to do with it. But that's no reason to refuse payment. I think he wanted to give you trouble. Eragon swayed blearily and said, It's good to be back. Caro's eyes softened, and he nodded. Eragon stumbled to his room, pushed the stone under his bed, then fell onto the mattress. Home. For the first time since before the hunt, he relaxed completely as sleep overtook him. And we're done with that fucking mammoth of a chapter. I'm sorry, but yeah. I have to watch when I drink because sometimes liquids just move right through me, and it's like I don't want to be like halfway through this chapter and like, okay, everyone just hang tight. I'll be done really quickly and I'll be back here. I mean, like if I had someone else, when I need to take a little break like that, powder my nose, as some would say, like then I would feel more comfortable and maybe drink a little bit more before filming. And like before I start recording, I do drink like a little bit, but not too much, depending on the length of film of the video. We're nearly done now. Woot! So this before I talk about the chapter, I just want to say we had a little guest here. Like, yeah, hi, lizard. Yeah, there's a lizard that's sort of been hanging out in the window to this room for like maybe a day or so. He comes, he says like, hi. And my plants out front, sometimes he's, just lazing out on them and I'll be watering. It's like, what the heck, dude? So yeah. And lizards are sort of like dragons. So it's like little dragons visiting me while I'm reading this series about dragons. I just think, this is something you should know because it's a nice coinky dink. But anyways, about this chapter, we finally get some real dialogue. And for me, reading third person point of view, like it's a little difficult because I like to have my tone reflect what the character's thinking, how the character's feeling, which is easier to convey in first person point of view. So I'm just, my inflections now are from Eragon's point of view. This is third person limited, so I'm just going to hang tight and see what Eragon's feeling, and so read like Eragon's thinking it. And so that allows me to get a little bit of structure so far, but so we're finally getting some dialogue, and we meet Sloan, the butcher, who, yeah, and then dude, if you're like, hey, he doesn't really seem that bad, he's just a little bitchy because, he's afraid of the spine since his wife committed suicide. Or, I'm assuming because, jumped off. Doesn't seem, then wasn't fell off, but jumped off. So it's like, yeah. Yeah, so I can understand someone just, you love someone so much and when they go away, and I can understand having a reaction like that. But as the series continues, he gets more unforgivable. So maybe, wait to give your final opinions on Sloan until the end of the series. Just because some things happen. Fun times. And it's, yeah. And with Eragon's voice right now, I'm trying to make him appear more childish. I mean, he is a child, but, he hasn't gone through all the trials and tribulations yet. So I'm like, okay, do a little childish. Like someone who hasn't seen shit yet. And we also meet Horst, the blacksmith, and we also meet Garrow. And Garrow has some good morals to him of, hey, we can't accept charity. We have to do things for ourselves. I sort of like his mindset there. And I like that while you can tell Garrow does not really like, magic, so he doesn't really like the stone because he's like, hey, it came from the spine, I don't like it, but we can get money, so let's sell that. So yeah. So I like his mindset of, I don't like it, but I'm going to make sure that I get some more money from this. So it gets away, get money, and someone else deals with the problems. So let's think of a sort of a question to ask for this chapter. If you were in Eragon's shoes and you were trying to sell, and okay, I don't have to do the setup because we just read the setup. Well, okay, so let's really simplify this question and make me have to do less work. If you were Eragon in this chapter talking with Sloan, what would you do? Would you react the same way? Would you do something else? Please comment down below. Please let me know. Pay attention to me. And also feel more than free to comment about anything else in this chapter. And also feel free to ask me questions about this chapter. But please remember, no major spoilers in the comment section. I'm hoping that people discover the inheritance cycle via these videos. So from you who have completed the series at least once, know there are some good twists and turns that people should not be aware of the first time they read the book. So let's see. Yeah. And if you would like your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini, and you're on the YouTube, link in the description. And if you're on my blog, link down below. And both links will take you to where you can buy your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini. And I can more than understand if you don't want to buy the book via the link provided. However, buying via those links does three things. One, it gets you your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini. Two, it helps support Christopher Polini. And three, it helps support me and this vlog. So if you like what I do, please help support. And if you're watching this on the YouTubes, Like if you just wanted to punch Sloan this chapter. like, dude, just chill, relax. It's okay. It's okay. Also, like if you're sort of on the opposite end of the camp and just want to give him a hug because he did lose his wife and he's obviously traumatized. So, like if you have any of those reactions. Also, remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel because I am not only going to be reading Eragon, but the rest of the Inheritance Cycle. So, don't miss out. I'm awesome. Things might actually get better. Also, I'm like trying to talk faster than the speed of sound, which does not work, obviously. Also, subscribe if you are a fan of the Animorphs series because I am doing an entire read through, entire dramatic reading of the entire series. Currently, I am up to Animorphs number 8, which you can tell by that little icon in the center of the screen saying Animorphs number 8, the alien. So yeah, 2 great series to follow for. Yay! And if you're watching this on my bloggity blog and watching on the desktop version of my bloggity blog, please choose the follow by email option. On the blog, I just don't do my dramatic readings of Inheritance Cycle and Animorphs. I also do mini reviews, full-length reviews, fanfics, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm working on a very long blog post, which one of those things, you start and you're like, I can do this, this will be awesome, and not even halfway through it, you're like, what the heck was I thinking? But you're so far along doing it that you're like, you can't back out now. I can't back out of this shit. But it will be awesome. Hopefully you all love it. So remember to follow by email so you don't miss out. And the next part of my Eragon dramatic reading will come out next week. So remember, if the episode is shown in the daytime, it's a long chapter. And if it's, shown at night, a slightly less longer chapter. And until next video, goodbye.